If you can do your best to quickly clear the aisles.
And then I forget this lady's name. She called me earlier. Did you talk to her? Did you see her?
Please take your seats.
I'm so glad you came. You know, we need these types of turnout. I didn't know it would be as massive as it is, but I'm glad it is. Glad it is. Yeah. Everybody was, and it's about time that there's massive and massive concern from both perspectives. I want to hear both perspectives, but I know what I have nothing to say indifferent about size. You know, we know what side is happening. So with that said, I don't want my students to come on.
If everyone can try to find a seat or clear the aisle, we'll get started.
See, nobody's answering their phone. If
You hadn't submitted one before?
No, Brandon told me that they had.
We'll get to you. You're going to be late, though. Okay? Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
Hey, how are you?
He's in his car. He's like,
The one with 100 black
lost
lights?
weight.
Yeah.
That's like
I got one. I told you I had one guy that had called yesterday and filled out a card yesterday because he had to leave. So. Take the other two and put them on.
Hey, Chad, you can have me go before Mary?
Yes. I'm going to talk to Mary real quick.
And that is against the law.
Yeah.
That is against the law. Now, do it if you want to.
Don't worry about how I am.
I'm not worrying about much. Somebody who gave me call to look at it and tell me, I'm sorry, and he wants to take that person before everybody else to look at it. Let's bring it in.
Nice to see you.
I mean, why do I have? Hey, how you doing? I'm wonderful. How are you? Fine, and so we know we'll see you.
Chime in.
That's right.
Everybody?
Yes, they gave me. No, they keep asking. They keep asking. Yes, at the city council meeting, you know, just walk in there and they don't know what I'm saying.
I'm not taking anybody out of
I don't care what you do, Chad, because you don't work with anybody. When you don't work with people, you don't. So let him do that if he wants to.
The people are sitting here, but she's not.
No, I don't care where my name is. Oh, I thought you said.
Yes, after season.
I don't care.
If I can have everybody's attention. If I can have everybody's attention, we'll try to get started.
Because I would not come to somebody else's chair.
I appreciate everyone being here today. My name is Chaz Romer. I'm chairman of the Recovery School District Committee for the Bessie Board of Louisiana. This is a public hearing regarding the transition plan of the schools currently within the Recovery School District. I want to thank everyone for being here. I'd be more concerned if no one were here. So I appreciate your participation. I appreciate your concern. I appreciate your voice. I appreciate you taking responsibility for your community. We all appreciate that. I will say the following things quickly. We obviously have a tremendous crowd here tonight. Our goal is to get through as many of the public comments as we can. Now, we will not go all night. We have to be out of this building at 8:30. We have, how many cards do we have? We have 85 people that have submitted a card to speak. We should be able to get through all 85. I will limit the amount of time per person so we can get through all 85. I will ask everybody to try to confine their comments to a minute and a half. I will give leeway. I always have. But I will ask you to try to wrap it up. And I ask that when I ask you to wrap it up, if you could please try to do so, that will help us get through all 85 people that have submitted a comment card. Also, I'd like us to try to keep our comments specifically to the transition plan. I know there are a lot of things people would like to say. If I allow you to stray from that, we will never get through all 85 comments. Again, I will give leeway, but I'm asking you to work with me to help get through the group. Once again, I want to thank you for being here. I want to thank your participation. I'm going to open the meeting by allowing the superintendent, Paul Pastrak, to make some opening comments regarding the transition plan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'm very excited to be here tonight. I can recall back in 1984 when I began work at Andrew J. Bell Junior High School, when I was a lawyer there working on a partnership with that junior high school, that we had some very, very challenging circumstances. And it's very, very exciting to be here tonight where so many people are so interested in the outcomes, successful outcomes, and the highest successful outcomes for children in our city. And it's a testament to the good work that all educators have done in the post-Katrina era to bring our schools in New Orleans to the highest academic achievement that they've ever been in. So I'm very proud of all of the educators who are here today. I'm very proud of all the students who are here today. I'm very proud of all the citizens who are here today to be a part of this very important decision. I have been asked by law, or I have been directed by law, to make a recommendation to the State Board of Education. By law, at the end of 5 years on the enactment of this legislation, I must make a recommendation, and I did so in Baton Rouge 3 weeks ago. By law, then, the board is to take an action after having a public hearing in the city, and the board, I have asked the board to take the action in December so that we can take the full measure of the comments. One of the things I'd like to add to the chairman's comments is that we will receive comments online starting on Monday on the Department of Education website. If you Google Louisiana Department of Education, you can pick it up, or louisianaschools.net. You can submit any comments. And there are people who want to make much larger comments than perhaps tonight may permit. You'll be able to do that. I wanted to summarize briefly what the recommendation is and what it's based on so that you'll just have the benefit of that. It's posted in detail on the website, again at louisianaschools.net. Basically, I outlined 4 important points that I would recommend that the board adopt in the December meeting. Number 1, that schools that would be considered for transfer must be schools that are on a positive upward trajectory, schools that show success, schools that have been recovered. And the good news is, in the Recovery School District, we have many of them. Secondly, I have said that those schools which become eligible for transfer should have the choice to decide where they should go, whether to stay in the Recovery School District or to be transferred out. And then third, I have suggested that the City of New Orleans needs to decide where schools that leave the Recovery School District should go. Should they return to the Orleans Parish School Board, or should there be an alternative entity? And there are actually people in the community who are working actively on that discussion. And I have been in touch with them, and my staff have been in touch with them, and they with us, on just to whom we should return the schools. And then fourth, we must have an entity that receives schools that is equipped to be able to maintain the significant growth that we've been successful in achieving. We want to be able to be assured that all schools that are transferred will be successful upon their departure from the state recovery school district. Mr. Chairman, that that concludes my remarks, and I did note that we have some guests with us today, and I'll go ahead and have you introduce them if you would like.
First, I'm going to defer to Ms. Givens, who's a member of the Bessie Board, who would like to recognize several local public officials.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to recognize Senator Mary Landrieu, who's with us this evening, and to thank her for her continued support of educational progress in the parish of Orleans. I think we all owe her a deep debt of gratitude for the efforts that she has made on behalf of this city in Congress. Were it not for Senator Landrieu, much of the money that we are now using to enhance our school system, to develop charter schools, to build new buildings, to grow, to progress, and to educate these children would not have been possible without her leadership. And I think we really owe her a standing round of applause. As all of you know, Senator Landrieu, if she makes her way to the podium, you don't have to call her twice. And if you don't have a number for her, see me after the meeting. I know where she lives. But Senator Landrieu is always there. She's always sympathetic. She always is open, and she's always seeking balance in this community. And in that regard, Senator, I'd like to ask you to join me in telling our community that we are not here to be divided. We are one city.
Thank you.
One
Thank
people.
you.
One goal. Thank you, Senator.
Well, I am so happy to be here. I'm so happy to be here tonight. And Mr. Chairman, I'm going to try to stay within my 1.5-minute allotment because I know everybody is anxious to speak as well. Llewellyn, let me thank you, Board Member Givens, for her extraordinary leadership in keeping our community united and moving forward and open to hear different ideas and suggestions as we push forward to provide an opportunity for excellence in education for every child in our community. I want to thank the Bessie Board members who have worked overtime, Chaz Romer as the chair of this committee, to help us find a way forward. To our two Pauls, Paul Pastorek and Paul Valles, who have given really extraordinary leadership in this effort. To Darrell Gilbert, our superintendent. Darrell, I know that you're here. Darrell Kilbert, who's here tonight, who's given terrific advice and support to this effort, and to Woody Koppel and the school board here in the city of New Orleans. I want you all to know, and I appreciate the applause, but this $1.8 billion that came to this city was the first time this has ever happened in the history of the United States. That FEMA has given in one lump sum enough money for us to build our master plan or a modified master plan. Not every decision has been made, so that each child in every school building can either be in a brand new building or a brand new renovated building based on how our neighborhoods are coming back, and we are building every neighborhood basically the same footprint before Katrina as now. So I'm excited about being able to accomplish that because there was some question about that. I'm excited to see how every neighborhood, whether it's from Lakeview or Gentilly or the lower 9th Ward, some are moving a little faster than others, but we've got our eyes on the entire city. This city is becoming a model, not just for the country, but actually internationally. People are looking at what's happening here. And in my last 30 seconds, I want to say that I generally support the plan that the superintendent has outlined, a plan that provides choice and opportunity and what I'd like to think of as cooperation. It's not competition, but it's cooperation. It's working together to reach a goal, and if we continue to just listen and be open to the great ideas that are going to come tonight, I believe that we can find our way forward. This is, ladies and gentlemen, uncharted territory. But the United States government, not just the Bessie Board, not just our superintendent, and not just our school board, but the federal government, our President, Barack Obama, and our superintendent of education, the President's superintendent, Arne Duncan, is making sure or trying to outline for every district in America an opportunity for every child to be in an excellent school. And we're finding a way to do that. There's no textbook. There's no model. We're creating that model here. So let's be patient and supportive and respectful as we do it. God bless you all, because the future of our city and this region depends on it. Thank you, and I'm going to continue to be supportive. Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Let the record show you exceeded your minute and a half, but I was very gracious.
Mr. Chair. In addition, I'd like to recognize Mr. Woody Koppel, who is president of the Orleans Parish School Board, and I'd like to thank the members of the school board for their cooperation in graciously allowing us to use McDonough 35 to host this meeting, and for setting it up and coming in and making the Bessie staff comfortable and to help us function as they always do. I'd also like to thank the board secretary for all that she's done in making sure that we get our minutes for the Oversight Committee and that we get notices and so forth. Mr. Koppel, do you have greetings for us?
And I would invite, I'd ask the board, if possible, to also keep your remarks short, but I did want to invite you to come up at the beginning of the meeting
Hold
to
up,
say...
guys. Wait, don't stampede. Don't everybody come in one time. I'm going to introduce you. All right, well then let me recognize Mr. Thomas, Ms. Cynthia Cade, Ms. Lourdes Moran, Mr. Brett Bonin, Superintendent Darrell Kilbert, and Mr. Thomas Robichaud. I don't see you, but I know you're here. All right, thank you. And they're all members of the Orleans Parish School Board. I may be getting upset. I didn't get that kind of applause. What's going on here? Your mic's
Can
not
you,
on.
or pull it closer? Thank you. Wait, it's actually off, I believe.
There we go. We have a statement we prepared, and make it short and sweet so everybody gets their time. Mr. Chairman, esteemed members of the Board of Elementary and Secondary Education, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Orleans Parish School Board, welcome to McDonough 35. First, let me begin by thanking you for coming to New Orleans and holding this important forum. The future of public education in New Orleans is at stake, and it's important that our community's voice be heard. Tonight you will hear from parents, teachers, students, and education advocates who are passionate about the quality of education that our children should receive. The Orleans Parish School Board is a major voice in this ongoing conversation. From the outset, we want to make one point very clear. The Orleans Parish School Board speaks for more than its 7 elected members. It speaks for more than just the 5 open enrollment schools that it runs. It speaks for more than the 12 charter schools that it authorizes. This board must also speak on behalf of the tens of thousands of taxpayers. Because by law we are the fiscal agent for public education in New Orleans, and we're responsible for receiving and accounting for tax revenues and for all traditional and charter schools, whether they be under the umbrella of OPSB or RSD. While we absolutely support the continued autonomy of all charter schools, and while we unequivocally believe that all traditional schools should be run with the support and input from their neighborhood communities, the public still expects that one entity be held accountable for how their tax dollars are spent. The Orleans Parish School Board has demonstrated that it has reformed itself over the past 5 years. Clean audits, a stellar bond rating, a balanced budget, a debt reduction plan are clear indicators that we are good public stewards of the taxpayers' money. Now an important decision has to be made about who will be responsible for ensuring that schools are not only fiscally sound, but academically sound going forward. once the Recovery School District relinquishes control of now successful schools, and by law, that will happen according to the legal guidelines set forth by Act 35, who will be responsible? Who will be held accountable? If some schools thrive and others continue to struggle. Thankfully, there is no way to compare New Orleans of 2004 to what we have today. Instead of talking about mere survival, we are here to discuss the issues that advance us from where we were to where we are now, and to a new level of academic achievement, accountability, and success that we only dreamed of a few years ago. Having said that, as a community, we face key issues that affect the further development of our children. These issues now include how to adapt the current system to Act 35, how to address schools that continue to struggle, how to address special circumstances and day-to-day challenges, and perhaps most importantly, how to make all schools accountable to taxpayers and voters who want to know where their taxes are being spent. I think we all agree that successful charters and traditional schools should be left alone to continue to do what's successful. No one wants to fix or tamper with what isn't broken. No one wants to control them. But who will now be responsible for helping those charter schools or traditional schools that are clearly struggling? Who will be accountable to taxpayers and voters who want to know if their tax dollars are being wasted on a particular school that's clearly failing? It's clear that no one person can be accountable. It's clear that no one school can be responsible. The Orleans Parish School Board represents this community, its voters, its taxpayers, and by law must be responsible for and must be accountable to our children. We thank you for hearing us, and Mr. Kilbert has a couple of words. Dr. Kilbert.
Mr. Kilbert, he used your minute and a half.
He promised me to be brief, so if you don't mind, that'd be great.
I will be very brief. Good afternoon, members of the board and certainly our audience. We are certainly glad that the number of people who are here in behalf of public education for all children. We are all here and we are all speaking more alike than we are different. We are all about choice. But what we are concerned about is for equity, access, and accountability. The new 3 R's: rigor, relevance, and relationship. This board has mandated that we have transparency, that it's accessible, and it's available. And we, as the elected members and appointed superintendent by this board, would like to be at the table when decisions are made about the Orleans Parish schools. I would ask the audience to please allow me to continue, because this is not about any one individual, this school board, and certainly not about me. It's about these children that we service. And it's about our children, whether it's RSD, whether it's charter, whether it's OPSB, whether it's MOUSE. It's about our children. And the bottom line is that we work together to come to an understanding of how we can best service children, because it's not about a you against them, against us. I'd like to remind you of 3 pronouns: I, me, and mine. It does not work. But I'd like to use the personal, possessive, plural pronouns, our, we, and us. And if we can do this together, I can guarantee you that Orleans Parish, all of Orleans Parish, will be a better place. Superintendent Pastorak and I have met on several occasions, and he asked me a question: what is it that you would do different, and how is it that you would go about making a change? Well, I have for Superintendent Pastorak and the rest of the board a document that I'd like to discuss at a later date with him that he asked me to provide for him and for the members of the board, where we can talk about how do we transition schools, because I believe that the spirit of the law says that the schools should be returned back to the local elected body. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Rosenberg?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to recognize, if you will, the former U.S. Attorney for this district. You didn't think I knew who you were, Harry. Harry Rosenberg.
I hope I don't know any money. That's what I'm concerned about.
I will say this. I'm glad to receive your comments. I am going to have to start being a little more strict on time, if you don't mind. We have a number of cars to get here, so if you could adhere to the minute and a half, I would appreciate it very much.
I understand, Mr. Chairman, and unlike other lawyers, I'm going to be succinct. I'll be brief. Members of the board, Mr. Pastorak, Senator Landry, fellow residents of Orleans Parish behind me, and all of those who still aren't able to get in. I want to speak to you a moment as a graduate of Orleans Public School System and just try to talk to you about a couple of discrete legal issues in the report submitted by the RSD. Number one, that report violates the state constitution. Number two, it violates
I'm going to interrupt
law.
for 1 second. Now, guys, I'm going to say this. I would like you to try to not applaud, sneer, either side, whatever side you're on. We have a lot of people to get through, and I need that cooperation, please.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to quickly jump up. What I would respectfully submit to the board is that what the RSD report now proposes directly contravenes 92 years of constitutional law. Specifically, if you just look at Article 8, Section 9, as well as the revised statutes, what the RSD wants to do is take control of the school system, and I respectfully submit to you the legislature has not allowed that, nor does the Constitution. What the RSD recommendation will result in is a fragmented school system that shortchanges the students, frustrates parents, and without doubt will retard the progress of this community. I will not belabor and go over again the Cowan Institute that I know the members of the board have already received, an independent, neutral group that has criticized the report of the RSD. I'm not going to go into all the deficiencies they raised. What I will say is this: the Recovery School District has become a misnomer. It's become recovery for some school districts. And that is not what the Orleans Parish School Board wants, and we know that's not what these folks want. This chaos is only compounded in the report that the RSD demands a whole series of complex documents such as MOUs, leveraging against the Orleans Parish School Board with more paperwork and more bureaucracy. It's directly at odds with the Constitution. It skips over some core issues that the Orleans Parish School Board owns the property, it's responsible for the repairs of the facilities, and it's the taxing facility under the state constitution. I just respectfully submit to you in closing this, that RSD has kidnapped local control. The local control of schools is a cornerstone of the Constitution. It's a cornerstone. And the schools like the ones in the Orleans Parish School District at the top of the performing district ought to be a telltale sign. I just ask the members of the board to consider giving back the schools to the people and the students of Orleans Parish so people don't have to drive for 3 hours to voice a complaint in Baton Rouge. What I'd submit, though, is more important, is that the RSD's time has come to end because it's limited by the legislature and it wants to go on indefinitely, and that's not permitted by the Constitution.
Thank you. Appreciate your time.
Lastly, Mr. Chair, Mr. Chair, lastly, I would be remiss if I did not recognize two people that I know are older than I am. And one of those is the Reverend Samson Skip Alexander, who has been a tireless advocate for civil rights in New Orleans. And the other is my esteemed mentor, Dr. Millie Charles. Dr. Charles is the founding dean of the School of Social Work at Southern University in New Orleans. She is also a tireless advocate for the rights of children and equity and parity in the educational system. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Gibbons. We're going to proceed. I'll call two names at a time and ask you to both come down if you would. Again, I'm going to try to keep it brief if you may. If you hear that you're repeating what someone else has said, I'd ask you to keep it brief so that we can get to as many people as we can under the limited time. Start with Helene O'Brien and Chantel Young. And next will be Titus Lynn and Allison McCrary.
Good evening.
And would you please state your name? I'm sorry.
Okay, good evening. My name is Chantel Jalita Young, and I am a former student of Maurice Jackson Waters Elementary and Edward H. Fields Junior High School. I'm here today to speak on behalf of the two schools, and I would like the public school system to continue to have a hand in this. And the reason why I'm speaking again, because Phillips and Waters deserve to keep the names that they had. And those schools were built, Edward H. Fields Junior High was built in 1964, and Waters was built a couple of years before that. Mrs. Waters was a great educator. Edward H. Phillips was her role model. And if she was here today, she would want me, as a former student, to speak on behalf of those schools. I may be the only one here tonight along with my mother, but I have a whole community behind me, and we would love those schools to keep their name. If they knew their history, they would not change it. Mrs. Waters was the first principal to enforce uniforms, and she was also a principal that started the Gifted Children's Program. For 42 years, she was the only principal the school had. Edward H. Phillips was an educator, he was a minister and a civic leader, and he was a man that fought for the rights of all kids to have an adequate education. Reverend Phillips was Ms. Waters' principal, and he was her role model. And she wanted him to always have the schools to have those names, and she was a person that always stood up for a great education. And the community have the rights to name those schools once it's built. We want to keep the black and gold and the blue and gold alive. The Eagles and the Vikings shall stand, and the community is behind us.
Thank you. I will say this, Ms. Young, I appreciate your comments. I want to remind the audience, and this is for anyone that may speak, we're trying to keep the conversation related directly to the transition plan. I appreciate your comments. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I might, let the speaker know that she's not the only graduate of Phillips. There's Dr. Lavinia Wallace, there's Representative Cynthia Cade, and I am the first valedictorian. Okay? Thank you.
My name is Helene O'Brien, and I'm the president of the Service Employees International Union, Local 21 LA. Our union represents cafeteria and custodial employees who work for Sodexo and Aramark in the Recovery School District and charter schools. Almost 80% of our members are parents or grandparents of public school children. We support school reform. We support charter schools. But we have faced many problems due to the other side of New Orleans school reform. Pre-Katrina, cafeteria employees in the school system received 10 paid sick days per year. Post-Katrina, they received none, 0. School custodians have faced enormous challenges as well, Everyone in this room knows the schools are not as clean as they should be, yet 1/3 of the custodians in the RSD and charter schools were forced a few months ago into part-time or reduced-hour jobs. Custodians with years of experience in the schools, with families, most of them lost their health insurance and are struggling to pay full-time bills on part-time jobs. The issue of democracy and local control is related to how we address these problems. We tried to meet with Mr. Vallis and his staff 7 times over the past year. More than 3 times, groups of workers went to the RSD offices to seek assistance. We went to the Bessie Board meeting in Baton Rouge in June, where you told us that these employees don't work for the school system, so it is not your problem and there's nothing you can do. We've made public records requests to review the contracts with these for-profit companies. In every case, no response. How do the workers go about getting heard? What are the proper procedures for the community to raise issues and concerns? We all, everyone in this room, believes cafeteria employees deserve paid sick days, and we all want schools clean and workers fairly paid. Even more importantly, we support school reform and charter schools. We should be allies, but we have been treated like enemies. School reform should be sustainable, but if the decisions keep being made by people who are unaccountable to local communities, the reforms we have seen these past few years will be thrown out by angry communities and angry workers, just like what happened last month in Washington, D.C. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, after the next 2 speakers, Shana Johnson and Nash Cruz. Go ahead. Please introduce yourself.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the board. My name is...
And get close to the microphone.
My name is Titus Lin. I'm here on behalf of the Louisiana Justice Institute. Given the reduced amount of time that we had, we're actually going to defer our time to Shana Johnson, our coworker.
Thank you. And that went for Allison as well? Okay, thank you.
Good evening. Over a year ago, myself, along with ministers, the late Reverend Arthur Wadsworth Jr., and members of UTNO and other community members traveled to the RSD meeting in Baton Rouge. And finally, we have a meeting in New Orleans a year later. In 5 years, there's still no central location for RSD governance in New Orleans. In Pastor Rick and Vallis' Conditioning for Success proposal, you boasted that schools improved an average of 8 SPS points over 3 years. That's only 2.7 points per year. It's going to take 15 years with the average RSD score of 60.1. It's going to take 15 years for them to achieve academic achievement. It's going to take 33 years for academic excellence. We're all going to be old and gray by then. It's a proposal to transfer schools, but yet only 3% of the schools have even been recommended to be given the option to transfer back to OPSB. It's been 5 years since RSD started. Your time is up. The community has spoken. 2.7 points, an average increase for SPS per year is not acceptable, and there's nothing to boast about that. We want our schools back, and in that proposal you said the community has not yet determined the best strategy to move forward, but we have. We want our schools back, and we want to take them back in increments. We want high schools along with their feeder schools. It is clear that RSD schools and OPSB schools are operated differently under 2 different school systems. For example, we want Clark High School back. We want Clark feeder schools back. We want Clark's feeder schools back. If we could start reforming the educational experience with the children at Craig and Turo, which are Clark's feeder schools, then by the time they reach Clark, they'll be on target with their academic achievement, rather than wasting valuable education time in high school reteaching what should have already been taught by the RSD. We also want Cohen back and his feeder schools. Studies have shown that children who have been placed in a steady learning program achieve more than those who constantly are moved between school systems and school operators. Consistency is the key here. RSD is only consistent in one thing, 2.7%.
Thank you. Next, George Motti. and Albert, I believe it says Clark.
Hello, I'm Nash Malpas Cruz from the Cowan Institute. I trust you all have received our analysis of the recommendation. Tonight, I'd just like to highlight two main points that we think are very important and should be incorporated in the recommendation before it is voted on in December. Number one, while the RSD traditional high schools have shown some gains, all 5 of them still have an SPS score of below 35 out of a possible 200. Only 14.6% of the students who graduated in 2009 went to college. Any other school operator who had an SBS score like this would be standing before you making their case for keeping the failing schools. The RSD should be held to the same standards as other schools and include a specific plan for its lowest performing schools as a part of the state's recommendation. The RSD says their plan is to charter many of their poorly performing schools. That is a fine plan and may help schools in a year or two. However, there should be a parallel plan in place for the interim period that takes care of kids who are in these schools today. The 11th graders, the 12th graders, the kids who are graduating or drop out before their school is chartered. If the RSD is to retain these low-performing schools, a specific plan must be in place and a part of the recommendation. Number two, the superintendent's recommendation allows schools to choose. So we recommend that the schools that choose to leave the RSD and return to local control should be transferred outright to the OPSB. For a charter school, the RSD's recommendation says there will be an MOU between the charter and OPSB. It is unclear what will happen to the original charter. We believe that a new charter should be negotiated between the school and the OPSB, and the old charter agreement with Bessie should be turned in. For a district-run school, the RSD's recommendation says there will be an MOU between the RSD and OPSB. We believe that schools should be transferred to the local district without an ongoing MOU. We believe that these schools should be turned to full local control. The mission of the RSD is to turn around the failing schools. The RSD should retain no authority over the schools that are no longer failing, whose transfer to the OPSB is approved by Bessie. Thank you, and we have copies of our report for the audience if you'd like some, and additionally, it's on our website.
Thank you.
Yes, my name is George Mahdi. I'm with Neighborhood Unity and Merge. You know, we talk about rules, laws, and regulations. We have to ask, is this process of recovery schools legal itself? You can't operate a dual school system. You know, this is unconstitutional. We need to examine these questions and see, you know, the constitutionalism of this. You know, it violates the equal protection of students. Secondly, the RSD should be shut down as a matter of its own classification. Not only has it been a structural failure, but it also promoted failure in the students themselves because of the labeling and stereotype stigmas that they receive by having to go to these schools. So this perpetuates a failure identity among themselves that doesn't give them the initiative or the opportunities for change. And they're not going to be given the opportunities to change because a recovery school is a failing school. So this is some of the things that we have to address and recommend and examine as we go along. And because if we don't, then we're just resegregating the whole school process again. And I know you're not about that, right? You know, this is something that we have to do. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Before you start, Mr. Clark, let me announce Bonnie Conway, or is it Conwoy? I'm not certain. and Angela Aubrey. Go ahead, sir.
As always, my name is Albert Chua Clark. I'm here representing 3 groups. One of them is Neighborhood Unity. One of them is Merge Mobilization, Racism in Government Everywhere. Other is the POCC, Prison of Conscience Committee. Need we say we're not here trying to, in a sense, bat for the New Orleans Public School Board. Need we say we remember prior to Hurricane America, a.k.a. Katrina, that the New Orleans Public School Board was part of the problem. We remember from Act 193 to Act 35 what happened. We know that after Hurricane America hit, that the Orleans Public School Board rushed to give the Algiers Charter Association the right to take over 16 or more, if I'm not mistaken, public school and charter them. They gave them the money. We understand that. We remember that. So we're not here trying to bat for them. Need we say we're here trying to put things in perspective. We see this as the issue of white supremacy. It's white world supremacy. That's right. That's right. We're not here trying to sugarcoat this. We're batting for our community, African children, our babies. We're not just talking about, bigger head. We're talking about our babies.
Excuse me.
We're talking about our babies again. Excuse
me. Excuse me.
What you got? What you got to say?
I'm asking the audience to please be quiet because I can't hear a word you're saying. Okay.
We like to say. If you're gonna talk about dealing with this matter, we talk about giving folks back to those students who were there prior to Lusher. We like to deal with this as it relates to the international school, who was established by a former city councilwoman, Miss Madura, who kicked the students out of the Andrew Jackson African kids, put them on the street, and after that wasn't good, she went to Rock Wayne. Again, we like to say, if you're gonna start with something, start with dealing with that. Again, we remember right after Hurricane America hit, with Bessie in New Orleans Public School.
Sir, I'm not asking you to wrap up.
We're trying to keep it real.
I'm not asking you to wrap it up. That's all.
We're going to wrap it up. Yeah. But we remember Jarvis. We remember how they were feeding our babies cold food. How, they had more guards running the facility than they had teachers. Again,
I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. Would you wait 1 second? Thank you. If I could please have some quiet, we'll get going again. Thank you.
My name is Bonnie Conway, and I'm representing Citizens for One Greater New Orleans. Citizens for One Greater New Orleans is a nonpartisan, non-sectarian, grassroots initiative formed to be a voice for reform and renewal in Greater New Orleans and for a better Louisiana. This community group provides a venue and resources for citizens to voice their opinions and concerns and for taking action for rebuilding Greater New Orleans. Our group was formed after Katrina, and we have been involved in such things as levy reform, consolidation of assessors, the hiring of the Inspector General, criminal justice, and education. We are no small initiative. In fact, we have over 20,000 people registered on our website. The primary decision before Bessie regarding the RSD in New Orleans is whether to extend the Type 5 charters whose initial 5-year term is expiring. Citizens for One Greater New Orleans strongly supports the extension of those charters for an additional 5 years.
Guys, I'm going to be consistent now. Please.
We have studied conditioning for success and understand the wisdom of a comprehensive pathway for all Louisiana schools under RSD. We also concur that both the individual schools and the system should meet specified standards before return should be considered. However, we question whether the concerns we have regarding the process of return can be addressed before the December deadline for Bessie to vote on the renewal of the charters.
Ms. Conway, I apologize. I'm going to ask you to wrap it up,
That's it. We just encourage the Bessie board to vote to renew the Type 5 charters, whose initial 5 years are expiring.
Thank you.
Point of information.
Before our next speaker, Jennifer Blaylock and Kenneth Gill will be next.
Hi, I'm Angela Aubrey. I'm here to address the RSD instability. I'm an